Hello everyone, welcome to Knowledge India once again. In this particular video in the Terraform series, we will learn further, some of the concepts like how to go ahead and define variables, how to go ahead and output certain values from those resources which you created, right? And we'll also see that how can you really pass some values for the variables which you have defined actually at the time of running, or basically when you do Terraform apply, at that time if you want to basically supply certain values for the variables, how to do that. So those are the things which we want to do, or which we want to learn in this particular tutorial. If you are watching this tutorial as the first one, then just to let you know, this is part 4. There are other videos before this which you can watch from the playlist from the playlist, the URL for which you will find in the description of this video. Okay, so let us move ahead. And what we'll do is, if you remember, we were there in this particular folder called TF code, and if I just show you the content of this folder, it's like this. And if you remember, what happened was that in the last video, after after showing you everything, I executed Terraform destroy, so it actually deleted the EC2 instance which Terraform had provisioned. Right now, here you can see there are a couple of files. You know about many of them already. There is one file which I want to tell you about, which is terraform.tfstate.backup. So what happens is, terraform.tfstate, right? This file always keeps the current state. Basically, like it kind of keeps the properties or values of different attributes of the resources which are created by Terraform. So if you remember, in the last video or in one of the previous videos, I showed you that Terraform created the EC2 instance, and after that all the properties of that EC2 instance, right, were saved in this particular file. Now that that EC2 instance has been deleted, so the last state was that there is nothing, right? It is gone. So that's why you see this thing kind of empty. But if you go ahead and look at the other file right here, which is terraform.tfstate.backup, you will actually see the values which were there in the terraform.tfstate file earlier. So if you scroll up, you will be able to see that EC2 instance ID which ended with 173C. If you remember, this was the instance which actually got deleted, right? So basically, just from the actual terraform.tfstate file, Terraform internally copies it and keeps this as a backup. Okay, anyway, let's move ahead. And what we want to do next is, we want to go ahead and look at the other concepts which I told you about. Now, one very important thing is, which people might have a doubt about, is that should I always name my file as main.tf? Is that really required? So there is technically no requirement like that. You can name your file whatever you want. Okay, you can name it abc.tf for that matter. So what I did, without spending a lot of time here, I'll just show you. I created another folder here called tf02, and if I show you here, I have a file called abc.tf, right? So I don't have main.tf, I have just abc.tf, and then I went ahead and executed Terraform apply in this particular folder. I will not spend time on that. I just executed it, and it created an EC2 instance, right? In the same way. So the way it works is that in whichever folder you are located, for example, currently I'm located in tf02 folder. So inside this, all the TF files which will be there, Terraform looks at it, tries to understand what is written in that, and it will go ahead and execute it. I'll show you more examples as we move ahead, when we'll have multiple files and you'll be able to understand it better. So there is no hard and fast rule that it should be called main.tf, but as a general practice, we name the actual configuration file as main.tf. That is the general practice which is followed. right? So we will also see that what are the common names which are used for other files, which we'll see just in a few minutes. But just wanted to make it clear that there's no such pushing that it should be called main.tf. Okay. All right. So I can just show you quickly. If you see here, the EC2 instance which has been created by this is BED. And if I go to my Northern Virginia region, you can go ahead and see this BED instance is available, right? So that's what it is. So I'll come back from this folder and I'll get inside my TF code folder. And now I want to show you, if you remember earlier we had this file cat, main.tf file. And in this, basically the value for each and every attribute was hard coded in this file, right? If you see for AMI, whatever is the value, it is written, instance type, it is just mentioned or hard coded there, and same is the case with tags. So everything is just hard coded there. Now, is that a good practice? Yes and no. For certain attributes where you don't want anyone to go ahead and change the values of those attributes, yes, you should just hard code it this way, right? You don't want anybody in your organization to change that, so yes, you will go ahead and hard code it. But when it comes to certain attributes which you want, basically you want to allow your users or people who are consuming your Terraform code, you want them to be able to go ahead and change the values of those attributes, then you go ahead and parameterize them, right? So when you go ahead and parameterize them, it basically allows the consumers of your template to be able to go ahead and provide the actual value of that variable when they are making use of your template, right? So for example, I can go ahead and very well parameterize this instance type attribute so that I don't hard code t2.small here. Rather, I'll put a variable here instead of that, and then I can pass the value of that variable every time I use this template and I try to create an EC2 instance. Let's say I am using this template today. I'll pass the value as, maybe m5.large, and tomorrow when I'm using it, I'll use c5.large, right? So accordingly, it will go ahead and work. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and show you that how can you actually go ahead and use variables, and also how can you go ahead and use outputs concept and basically output certain values in Terraform. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you this thing with the help of code here. Okay, so I've got a couple of files here available for you. Let's look at them one by one. First is main.tf. Then I have a file called variables.tf and outputs.tf, and then I also have a file called testing.tf files. So I'll explain you all of this one by one. Let's look at the content of main.tf first. Now, the only difference which you see here from the previous version of this file is this thing. We are now using a variable for the tag value. So earlier, the value here was hard coded. It was hard coded here as example app server instance. That was the string which was mentioned here, right? Now, instead of hard coding that, I am making use of a variable, and that variable is, the name of the variable is instance underscore name, right? And it is a variable. How do we identify that? It is mentioned in a way like var dot instance underscore name. But now the point is, where is this variable defined, right? I'm making use of it here. I'm referring this variable here, but it should be defined somewhere, right? So if you look at this file, I have not defined it here. Can I do it? Can I define it within this file? The answer is yes. But is that the right practice or right way of doing things? Answer is no. It is a good practice to go ahead and like group all your variables in a separate file. So I've got a file here called variables.tf, and if you look at the content of this file, this file will have all the different variables which I'm making use of, right? So how do you define a variable? Very simple, right? Variable, and then within double quotes you have mentioned the name of the variable, kind of similar syntax which you use when you define a resource. Same way here, instead of resource you have written variable, and then within double quotes you are putting the name of the variable, and then within these curly braces you specify a description. Please make sure that you write description. It is good practice that you write description, and then type of the variable, and then if you want you can specify some default value for this variable as well, right? Currently if you see, it is written as one example app server instance. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and let's say just edit this. Okay, so if you look at this file now, the default value which I've given is my server, right? If I'm not specifying any value at runtime, when I'm actually executing at that time, if I'm not specifying a value for this variable, it will go ahead and pick up the default value, which is my server in this case. If I specify a value at the time of execution, then whatever I specify, that will get used. Okay, so we'll look at both of those scenarios. Okay, now next thing is, let's look at this other file, which is outputs.tf. Now this is again just another file. Content wise, the structure wise, it is same as you had variables.tf. If you compare variables.tf and outputs.tf, you will see that it is quite similar, right? But it is just uh, about how you group things. So it's generally a practice that you will maintain main.tf, variables.tf, and outputs.tf, right? So in the outputs.tf, you have specified, or we have specified, two outputs here. First one is called instance underscore id, and for this we have given a description that what it is. It is basically the unique id of the ec2 instance. And how do we find the value of it? We find it using an attribute, right? Using an attribute of the resource. Now we have already discussed that how do you really refer a resource. If you want to do that, you have to first do aws underscore instance, which is the resource type. Then you put a dot, and then you specify the logical name of that resource. If you remember, we had discussed this in the earlier video, that the name of this EC2 instance in the Terraform side is app underscore server. So AWS underscore instance, which is resource type, dot app underscore server, which is the logical name of the resource, dot the attribute name, right? If you remember, you can go ahead and look at the Terraform documentation and you will find the name of each and every attribute. Okay, so this is the first output value. The second output value is instance underscore public underscore IP. So this part which I'm highlighting, this you can name whatever you want. You are just giving this name. If I want to call it, just I want to call it public IP without any underscore, I can call it that way. It doesn't matter, right? So this is something which I am naming it, right? Which I am giving a name, right? And then I give a description. And how do I find the value? AWS underscore instance dot app server dot public IP. This thing I cannot just type randomly, or I cannot just choose what to write here. I'll have to always refer the documentation to understand that what is the correct attribute mentioned under AWS underscore instance resource, right? I'll have to check that attribute name, and that attribute name only I can come and put here. Okay, so do that, and then of course closing the curly braces. That is my outputs.tf file. What is the functionality of this? The functionality is that when I go ahead and actually execute, right? When I go ahead and actually execute terraform.apply, what will happen is, once the whole execution is done and like resources are created, after that whatever is mentioned as output, like two things are mentioned here as output, those two values will be shown on the screen. Okay, so I think we did enough talking. Now let's go ahead and execute this. Just to summarize, we have a main.tf file. In that we are making use of a variable. That variable is defined in variables.tf, right? And the default value which is mentioned for that variable is my space server. Okay, and then there are two outputs, right? So let's go ahead and run this and see how does this work. So just to be sure, we'll execute Terraform init. We had done that earlier. Great. All right. Terraform validate. All right. So looks good. And we'll say Terraform apply. Okay, so it would automatically look at all the files which are there in this folder. And if you see, let's look at the plan. You can already see that there are some additional things available here. So if you look at the plan here, it says that it will create an EC2 instance. Yes, we know that. And for that EC2 instance, this is the MIID, instance type is T2 micro. And if you scroll down and you look at the tags for name, now it is picking up my space server. It is not, right, it is, of course it cannot take that older thing. So I have not provided any value at runtime, so it has picked up the default value. I'll also show you how you can pass changing values at runtime. I'll show you that in a minute, but for now it has picked up the default value which is mentioned in the definition of the variable, right? If you scroll down further, it gives you the plan that one resource will be added, and also it says that there are certain outputs, right? But these outputs will be known only after apply is done, right? So I'll go ahead and say yes, and now this means it will go ahead and create a resource. So now it says creating. If I go ahead and look at the AWS console, right, let me go ahead and refresh. Okay, so this instance is getting created, and for this instance you can see instance ID is 774 and the tag value is MySpace server, right? So good, let's just give it a few seconds here. Just this is the one which we are looking at. So this is done, and you can see here in the outputs what is shown: instance ID 3774 and instance public IP is whatever 222.172, which you can go ahead and check here as well. 222.172, right? So I hope you are clear with this part, that you should ideally, right, you should specify or keep all your variables in a separate file. And we also talked about outputs, that how you can go ahead and show values for certain things, right? So at least three files you understood. Now let's look at the last part where I said you can actually go ahead and pass the value for a variable. I mean, the whole reason why we created a variable was that we should be able to pass the value of that variable when we are executing it, right? So let's go ahead and do that. We have this another file which is called, I have just named it testing.tfvars. You can name it whatever, doesn't matter, but generally .tfvars is the extension which is used. You can name it whatever you want. Now if I just show you testing.tfvars here, right? So in this, all I have done is I have specified the variable name, which is instance underscore name, of course, and then equals whatever name or whatever value I want to pass. That's what I'm specifying. So I'm saying my custom name, right? So in this way, I mean, let's say if you have multiple variables and you want to pass value for multiple variables, you can have those multiple variables mentioned in this one file. You can do that. You want to pass value for 10 different variables, you can put the value for all those 10 different variables here in this file. You can do that, right? So the next thing is that how should you go ahead and actually how should you go ahead and basically tell Terraform that make use of this particular file, right? This particular file testing.tfvars when you are running the apply command, right? So for that, what you need to do is you need to go ahead and run. Okay, so you specify that what is the variable file which should be used. So here I'm saying the variable file is testing.tfvars. So you do this and then you say enter. Now when you run it like this, Terraform understands that what I need to do is I need to go ahead and pick the values of the variables from variable file, and the variable file here is testing.tfvars. So it will go ahead and check that okay, what all different variables are there in that. The variable which is defined there is instance underscore name, and for that the value is my custom name. So it will go ahead and use my custom name and try to do the apply operation. When it does that, it will now see that okay, the current value is my server, but it should be my custom name. So Terraform is telling me that yes, I can go ahead and achieve this for you. I need to just change one of the resource. Are you okay with this plan? I'll go ahead and say yes. And with that, ideally it should go ahead and update this. So we'll go ahead and check, and you can see it has updated the tag value here to my custom name, right? So you can see here it's all done, right? So the you know that's the whole thing. Whatever we saw here was all about how do you go ahead and structure your code better. Of course, we are still looking at a simple example, but I just wanted to drive the concept first to you. We can take a big template and then do this thing, and I'll do that in the upcoming video. We'll take a big template and I'll try to show you with multiple values, but I hope you got this idea. The we talked about some of these files. We talked about variables.tf file, we talked about outputs.tf, and then we talked about testing.tf vars, or basically it could be anything. abc.tf vars doesn't matter, right? So tf vars is the file where you actually keep the value which you want to pass for your variable, right? So that's it in this particular video. I hope you understood this. As we move ahead and we talk about some of the additional concepts, where we'll understand that how you can go ahead and write some code and make it shareable, or basically go ahead and share that code with others so that they can go ahead and make use of your code. You will understand that structuring your code in this way makes a lot of sense. Of course, you can go ahead and just have one file, and in that itself you can specify all your resources, all your variables, all your outputs. Possible, you can do that, but is that a good practice? Answer is no. So it's better that you go ahead and break down your code like this. That way it will be a lot more readable and it would be easy to maintain. So I hope you learned something from this video. If you did that, please like this video and probably share it with someone, right? And yes, we will come back with more videos, so stay tuned. And if you have not subscribed yet, you know what to do. Thank you, everyone. Congrats on completing that tutorial. We have a lot more similar awesome tutorials on our channel which you can go through in the playlist section. Let us know what you think about our videos in the comment section, and if you like it, please do share it with your friends and hit the like button. Thank you.